Good morning. This video is for the EOC assessment guide. So, like the EOG manual, this manual contains both paper and online directions, so make sure you know where they both are. So, the first thing that we need to talk about is makeup testing. The EOC does have a 95% participation requirement. And there are no appeals for exclusion from participation. The only exception from participation is a medical exemption for medically fragile students. The makeup test for an EOC must occur within 10 days of the original test, and testing for makeups can actually occur after the school year is over, and they can be on non-instructional days. So here is the testing time for the EOC. You'll notice that the EOC still is 180 minutes for its estimated time, and the maximum time is 240 minutes. And the number of items has been reduced to 60. So let's talk about who can administer the EOC. The basic requirements is that this person has to be employed by the school system, have professional training in education, and have training in the state testing program. We can also have test administrators who are retired substitute teachers. Before testing, there's a lot of things that have to be done. The first thing is to attend all test administrator training sessions, and I sent an email out recently that listed when the training sessions were. It's also in my April SMORE newsletter. You'll be reading and signing the test security agreement. You also need to read your administrator guide thoroughly and read the student directions so that you're prepared for any variations which may occur in your testing setting. Please read and study the testing code of ethics. If something goes wrong in your room, this is the document that we refer to first to see what kind of wrong it is. For the EOC, because they are required to be online, we also need to complete the online assessment tutorial for the associated test. Emails went out some time ago to all PLTs doing online assessments with their online tutorial date. If you do not remember when you are scheduled to do the online tutorial, please go to Lab and Resource Scheduler and find your online tutorial date. Please also review Appendix D. It has a lot of suggestions that are very helpful on what to do if you have technical issues like an image doesn't display properly for a question or a student gets kicked out of the test, which actually happens quite frequently. As far as test security procedures, these are the things that we need to talk about. For copying secure materials, just don't do it. Don't copy them, don't paraphrase them, don't file them away. These include test booklets, test questions, answer sheets. For the online test, we're not taking pictures of test questions. If something goes wrong with an online test and a picture needs to be taken of a test question, you need to call me to do that. We are not using any secure materials in classroom instructions or on study guides, and we are not discussing the test in person with our students or each other, and we are not discussing them on social media. I said in the EOG training that teachers have lost their positions because of discussing and posting about the EOGs on social media, and I want to re-emphasize here that if you do post about the EOGs, for example, especially posting secure materials like pictures of test books, or if you post test questions on social media, you are likely to lose your job. As far as displays, make sure that all displays that provide direct information about the subject being tested are covered. So for the Math 1 EOC, we want to make sure that all math displays are covered. For the testing environment, we want to make sure that the testing environment is as comfortable as possible, that it is well lit, quiet, clean, that the temperature is as comfortable as possible. We know that they turn up the air conditioning to make it cool. So we try to make that comfortable. We also want to make sure that the seating is arranged to discourage the sharing of answers. So that's how we need to handle the testing environment. As for accounting for and storing test materials, since the EOCs will be online, there are very few test materials you will need to account for. The big one is calculators. Calculators are considered a secure material. They must be cleared before and after the test. And if they are not cleared, that is an automatic misadministration. The other thing that must happen with accounting for and storing test materials is that you must ensure that as soon as a student's name is displayed on a computer screen, that you do not leave the classroom, because once the student's name is displayed on the computer screen, that computer has now become the same thing as a test booklet. It is a secure material. You also must safeguard access to secure tests. Only the people who need to have access to secure tests should have access to them. So in most cases, that would be the test administrator and the student taking the test. Sometimes I will have access to secure tests because there's been a problem and you need me to come look at something. As for read aloud administrations, in test security procedures, this is why we have a proctor in read aloud administrations. It's to protect the teacher and as well to protect the students, to make sure that accommodations are being delivered properly and that the test administration is proceeding equitably for all students. So I may have mentioned this already. This year, proctors are only required in one-on-one and read-aloud settings. This means that there will be more hall monitors on the hallways to ensure test security at all times. The online assessment tutorial is important for the EOC. It must be completed at least the day before each test. So students will complete the tutorial multiple times. I'm very sorry about this. They're going to get very bored. All subjects testing online were scheduled for time in the computer labs to complete the online tutorial. Emails were sent in February, and so you can check Lab and Resource Scheduler for your exact date. And I will be providing you with the desktop script at the training on May 6th. So there are some prohibited items in the testing room. The first is an electronic device. The official policy states that a student found or observed with a cell phone or electronic device during testing time must be dismissed from testing and a misadministration declared for that student. If you find a student with a cell phone, go ahead and call star 4113 and we'll proceed from there. We do not declare misadministrations. The Wake County Testing Office does. What they have told us about cell phones is that if a student is observed with a cell phone, but it is not being used and it is not on, then they will probably tell us to handle that issue internally. If the student was observed using the cell phone, for example, it's not uncommon to find students using the calculator during a math test, then they will probably declare it a misadministration. The other prohibited item in the test room is personal belongings. This is kind of a tricky one because the belongings can be in the room, but they must be placed at least under the seat. I know many teachers prefer students to place their belongings up against a wall so that it's away from their seats. Students cannot access their personal belongings at any time during testing, including breaks. The only exceptions for that are for medical needs and for feminine hygiene products. Once a student finishes the test, if they finish early, they must be provided an opportunity to read novels or other non-textbooks if they finish before time is up. For online testing, go ahead and ensure that the End Test button has been clicked to end the test. In order to make sure the test is fully ended, make sure that the big red stop sign is on the screen. You must also collect all their ancillary materials before the student begins to read. So this would be their calculator and their scrap paper and their pencil. As far as restroom breaks, please let my people go one at a time. unless it's about to be an emergency. Their test materials must be secured, so for online tests you'll be clicking the pause button. And also note the time the student left the room so the student can have their full allotted time to complete the test. There are many testing irregularities that could possibly happen during a test. I always encourage you to report something out when you're in doubt. I would rather help you decide whether something is an irregularity at first than find out something went wrong later. There are 3 common irregularities that turn into misadministrations at Martin. The first one is a student refuses to take the test. They just come in and say, I'm not going to do this. Or they get into the middle of the test and start to refuse to take it in the middle of the test. The other common misadministration is an accommodation was not provided. So please make sure to review your review of accommodation forms. Or an accommodation was provided that should not have been provided. So again, please make sure to review those review of accommodation forms. You're also going to want to know your local testing procedures. We will go over these at the staff meeting on May 6th. So you'll want to know things like, how do we give students time beyond the estimated time to complete the test? How do you contact me during testing if needed? How do you address online technical issues? How do you end an online test? How do we return students to the regular school schedule? And how do you report an irregularity? Again, we will go over all of these questions during the staff meeting on May 6th. There is an online readiness checklist on page 31 in your manual. There are 3 things on this checklist that you need to do. You need to ensure that NC Test is installed on your teacher and your student devices. You need to ensure that your NC Education username and password are working correctly. And you need to complete the online assessment tutorial. Don't do the rest of the things on the list. I have to do those things. Please also review pages 38 and 39 before test day. Thank you.